more of my the love and everything that I received from him was simply God given. It was so clear how God used him to work in this DTS and work through us this week. And whether that was just in what he said, or the way that he's praying for us, or even just the way that God impacted us through our experiences, he clearly needed to be here this week, and his blessings were just so rich. So I'm praising God right now that he was able to come and able to be here. Yeah, I decided also that I'm gonna make my my vlogging public, so that others can watch it. And I'm praying that it's not something that they take to heart, that it's like doctrine that they start following, but rather that it's something that they can now become attached to it as well, that they can connect with it. There's a better word, and that God in this universe, that our guy may be able to use it to build his relationship with them, to start building their hearts. So if you're watching this and you don't know me, don't worry about that. Just know that God knows you, that he loves you, and that's all that matters. Yeah. So yeah, let me dig into it. So what Matt talked about was the fatherhood of God, and he did this in so many different ways. And what I loved is that he didn't have an agenda with us. He didn't have a subject to teach. He just desired to teach the heart of God. So whatever the heart of God was whatever was flowing in us that day, and whatever God was telling him to teach. So for example, we started out by, he asks us, what defines you, 5 to 10 things, and then what question do you want to ask me? So already he was establishing that this was about us, but this was also about him. This was learning with him as well, and we are joining in together. So I'll quick read down my stuff at the beginning of the week, and then I'll give you what defined me at the end of the week tonight. So, yes, number 1, God's love, his grace and mercy. That's really, I mean, I could go on forever about all the things that define me from God, but I just kind of lump that in his love, his grace, and his mercy. My passions, so whatever I'm passionate about at that moment, and also whatever other people are passionate about, because I love spurring their passions forward. My parents, because I find that my identity comes in part of my parents. I am the son of Dean and Jen Peifer, and in Lancaster County, where I grew up and where I live, that is just a big thing. I mean, people know you by your parents and know who you're related to. And so when you meet somebody and you start playing the Mennonite game, or what we call the Mennonite game, it's always, oh, who are your parents? It's like, oh, well, my parents are Dean and Jen Peifer. Like, oh, okay. I know who they are, and I know them, or I know your grandparents, or I know so and so. It's your connection, and it's cool to see that in the Bible as well, which I might come back to. I might forget how to come back to it. But yeah, number 4, worship, and anything dealing with worship, whether it's worship team, how to worship God, worship Christ. Number 5, music and the arts. And number 6, relationships and being an extrovert. These are all things that define me and define who I am. And in that, that's kind of my identity that I'm wrapped up in. So we start with that. And then I'm going to skip over the question that I asked him. If you want to know, it's a question I've heard before from my summer camp. But it says, if God gave you a book, and it's the book of your life, from beginning to end, it has everything in it, would you read it? And basically it just finds out, like, are they intent upon their future? Are they looking forward, or are they content where they are at? So yeah. Yeah, so then let's dig in. Let's get into what he said. I'm going to skim over some of the stuff, just kind of read it, and if this was something that hit me, I'll talk about it. If it wasn't, then I'm just glad I'm giving you some of my notes. First one, impartation is more than just understanding. Impartation being what you receive upon listening to the Holy Spirit, listening to this word, what it's saying. Yeah. That being said, impartation is more of an, like, you understand it, but it takes it to heart. So there's like the knowledge of the head, and then there's the knowledge of the heart. And impartation is connecting those and making it one, so that your head and your heart are connected in that. The next thing is, well, I wrote down, God doesn't give his heart in pieces, which is an, I think it's a Amanda Cook song. It's called Pieces. Yeah, it's Amanda Cook and her album Brave New World. But the thing that I truly got from it and what I received from it is just that there's a line there that God doesn't give his heart in pieces. And it's so true. God gives everything all at once. Which is so cool that he gave me that to start off, because that was just so impactful. And then Matt said this: God doesn't need you, but he wants you. God doesn't need you, but he wants you. And that hit me so much more than just saying God loves you, or God likes you, or God wants a relationship with you, because it's the fact of God doesn't need us. He doesn't need anything that we have, but he wants that with us. He desires that with us. And if we trust in him, then he'll give that to us. He'll give that to us because he desires it. He wants it. He doesn't need it. He wants it. He wants a relationship with you, and he wants a relationship with me. And that just like blew my mind away. So I'm sitting there stunned. And then he goes back and says this: sometimes we feel more important in the equation than we actually are. God can replace me with a rock. Think about that. God can replace me with a rock. Because it says, even if you don't cry out, even the rocks will cry out. God doesn't need you. He wants you. But if you don't want him, he'll replace you with a rock. Talk about humility, which is exactly what I learned later in the week. And he was kind of like jumping in with all over the place because there's just questions that were coming up. One of the things he said is we cannot get burnt out in ministry. We get burnt out in work and following our work, not seeking after God's intention. I think there's a balance there, because you can get burnt out in just being. For example, I had a friend who was a missionary in a place that it was only, she was the only one who spoke English, didn't speak Spanish very well, and it was very hard for her because she couldn't communicate to anybody. And so what she did was very hard because she felt like she was at a loss, because there was a loss of communication and stuff like that. So she got tired and exhausted from the atmosphere she was in, not the ministry. She got exhausted from what was going on, the situation around her, not the actual ministry part itself. The ministry part always gives life because God is in that. But the situation that you're in can cause you to become burnt out or struggle. And that's where we got to take it back to God. That's where we got to take it back to him and just be like, God, we're struggling right now, so we need you. And this is where we got into something else. Your perception is one of the most important parts of a person, because everything comes out of that. So your perception as a human being is one of the most important things, because everything stems from your perception. Everything that I say, that I do, everything that I think comes from my perception. If I perceive you a certain way, my perception is going to cause me to think a certain way about you. And when that happens, I can see something very differently than what was originally intended. Yeah. One of the other things is the darker it is, the greater the Lord's light shines through it. Something cool. So this is where we got into kind of part of this lesson and what he wanted to share with us that day. As God is our Father, but our view has been skewed, and we need to revive our view of Him. God is our Father, and what happens a lot of times is we see our fathers differently than God desires us to see Him. I talked a little bit before of how my relationship with my father was broken, and my mother too, and I took that brokenness and I equated that to God as well. And so it wasn't just the fact of being broken, but it was the fact of having brokenness in God. So there's a skit. I forget what it's called. It's by the skit men or skit guys or whatever. And I think it's called Chiseled. But it said, make a mental note of your rocks that need to be chiseled. Something I wrote down just out of that. Because we all have rocks that need to be chiseled. We all have rocks and things. This is so cool because there's so many things that are foreshadowing what's going to happen later in the week. Now I'm knowing that, but reading back through this. Okay. I'll try not to jump ahead because that's for another video. But yeah. And then we kept going through, and then he got to his real end point. Through sonship, we have authority and we have relationship. I'm going to read down to this and explain it. God is something so much better than slavery for us. We're sons, prodigal son. God is daddy. When you say it, you can feel his embrace. You can be messy. You can be free. You can love. With God, it is not till death parts us, but rather when death unites us. Okay, so I'm going to sum up all these things. We talked to the prodigal son, and he brought it up in discussion. And so many times, I've heard this story so many times. And so many times, it's just been, okay, yep, the son took his dad's inheritance and he left. He spoiled it all, and got to the point where he was broken down and realized, okay, even my dad's servants and his slaves have it better than what I have right now. And so he was coming back to his father. It's just a bag at his feet to be a slave, even though he didn't consider himself worthy of that. And so he's coming back on the road, and his father runs to him. It's in Luke chapter 15, I believe. And I think I'm just going to read the verse because it describes it so much better than myself. And so the father runs to him, and then usually from there, you're what they'll go into is be like, oh, are you the prodigal son? Do you need to return to God? And then if you're really getting into it, then you have a pastor that will talk about the other son, and how he was just as lost because his desires and his heart was in the wrong place. But what Matt brought up, and don't let your heart harden to this. Don't be like, I've heard this before, so I don't want to hear it. So in Luke chapter 15, verse 20, it's talking of the prodigal son. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Let me read that again. So he returned home to his father, and while he was still a long way off, his father saw him coming. Filled with love and compassion, he ran to his son, embraced him, and kissed him. Now, something you need to understand is that in this culture, men did not run. Okay? They wore tunics or long robes. And so to run meant that you had to grab your rope and you had to hike it up. You had to pull it up. And if you were doing that, then you were showing off your ankles, you were showing off your thighs, and that was a disgrace to you. That was a disgrace to you and your family. And you would be looked on shamefully for that. But it says his father was filled with love and compassion. And so he ran to him. This is how God approaches us. God is, yes, God the Father. God is our Father. But God is our Daddy. So often when you say Dad, even Father, it's equated with this higher being that you need to kind of measure up to, that is the standard of what you need to be, and you need to look up to him and respect him above everything else, and you're not allowed to be your true self with him, because you need to respect him and he's the authority member. And that is true, but God has something so much more. Here's our dad. He's here with us, and he is embracing us. He is running to us. He's willing to take the disgrace because he loves you that much. And so he hikes up his tunic and he runs to you until he is in your arms and you are in his. And with daddies you can be messy. With daddies you can cry and you can be emotional. And it's good. Because you know that your daddy is going to be there to comfort you. It takes the embrace of a child, of a 2-year-old. And when you get hurt, when you're scared, you run to daddy. And when you're in daddy's arms, you feel safe. You feel comforted. I'm going to come back to the childlike faith later. But yeah, I'm actually going to stop there and do some personal understanding of this last part, because this is the part that really impacted me. And so in order just to keep the video short this time, for easier uploads to YouTube, I'm going to stop now and I'll come back to that. So watch the next video if you want that one. Yeah, thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate this. Yeah, I'm being vulnerable, but it means so much just that I know that people are watching and that I'm able to talk to people in this way. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it.